We're in Gateshead for the start of round 2 of the 206 Super Cup, a one-day event taking place on Friday night with 2 runs through the nearby Super Special, followed by 3 long stages through the darkness of Kielder Forest. The Super Cup drivers have already been to Kielder once this year because the opening round of their championship took place alongside the Border Counties Rally, run over some of the same stages only a few weekends ago. That was a one-day event and it was run flat out from start to finish and featured a major battle for the lead between Richard Sykes and local hero Chris Moore, which went neck and neck until Moore began struggling with an electrical problem that eventually cost him the lead.
What was that? What happened? It was getting up to 7,000, just dropping all the revs off, just literally wouldn't pull.
And on the next stage, when he pulled the crippled Peugeot over to let another car pass, one of the Kielder ditches yawned a bit too wide.
Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going! Oh no!
Sykes went on to the finish in Jeddah, now looking not just for his first podium finish but his first win outside the Winter Cup, but his ambitions were rudely interrupted at the very last gasp. Runner-up in last year's championship after his season got off to a slow start, Sean Gallagher was determined not to let that happen again.
Press, into turn loose, square right, don't cut. Come on, power, let's go! Yes! 4 left in, 100 over small press.
Launching one of his famous last stage charges, Gallagher flew at the Kielder tracks and snatched the victory away from Sykes, who was still delighted to finish in second place. Also delighted to be on the podium was Spanish newcomer Juan Roca, the young Catalan driver collecting a fine result on his first Kielder visit. Points follow position after just one round, with title favourite Sean Gallagher looking good and his main rival Chris Moore nowhere to be seen. But they're all here in Gateshead and the Super Cup drivers joined the International Rally for the first of 2 one-day events running consecutively this weekend.
It's going to be fun. I'll say the rain's going to get very slippy and very mucky in there. It's going to be dirty for everyone, but everyone's in the same boat, But looking forward. It's a great event, great turnout, and the atmosphere is unbelievable here.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. 5 left, into square right. Into square right again, tight. 60. 2 left.
The Super Special was just 1/3 of a mile long, but it was muddy and rutted and getting worse with every car that went through. Gallagher was 3rd quickest on his first run, but the troubled Sykes was 13th, 4 seconds behind and just a fraction slower than Juan Roca. The Catalan driver was 11th, but only 2 seconds behind the leader on stage 1, Jack Ingleby. But as soon as each crew finished, they went round to start again. And as they prepared for the second run, the Mini of Neil Burgess and Anna McColl had already begun a stage it was never going to finish.
Flat 3 right, 3 left minus, into square left narrow, keep to the left, keep to the left. No, stop here. Stop here. Stop here because the time's stop here, block the stage.
But it made no difference, the stage was already convincingly blocked with a logjam of marooned cars building up behind. The Mini refusing all attempts to move it without the aid of a tow truck or a big crane. Super Specials seldom signify a great deal in the overall scheme of things, and positions after these 2 probably even less. But there was worse to come in Kielder Forest. Dire predictions about the weather had all come true, and they now faced 30 miles of driving in thick fog with visibility down to 0 in most places.
here, 2 left over crest and 3 right. And flat 3 right here, 3 right here, and flat 1 right past quarry.
In these conditions, the extra lights were no help at all. In fact, they made it worse, and drivers had to rely completely on the co-driver's notes.
100. On 3 left, tightens over crest, past junction. Tightens. And 2 right into 5 left, don't cut. Here, 5 left, don't cut. 60 up. 4 left plus over crest, don't cut.
A good recce was vital, and maybe that helped Chris Moore collect 3 fastest times in a row for a margin of 90 seconds when he reached the finish. Though it was only half points today, a win while Gallagher was 5th and Richard Sykes was in a ditch was excellent news for Chris Moore's title hopes. Now it's Saturday morning and we could well be on a different planet for another one-day event. Being able to see was like being let off the lead, and some drivers enjoyed the feeling of it too much. Last night when the fog cleared on stage 4, Matt Jessup had seized the opportunity to go faster, a bit too enthusiastically, got out of shape going over a crest and gone off into a ditch, bringing instant retirement. This morning's first stage was a rerun of stage 4, and what happened was, oh well, let's hear it in the driver's own words. Determined not to make the same mistake as last night, he said, we went off earlier and into the offside ditch on this occasion.
Twice in one
Five, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Sean Gallagher had sprinted to the round 1 victory here, but though he went hard at the stages yesterday, he was a bit left behind as the fog lifted and seemed to favour the higher start numbers. 3rd on Friday was good for Jack Ingleby, but this morning was better still, and he was fastest through the long 2nd stage, joint leader of the event.
Crest dip. Crest 100.
Friday winner Chris Moore was the other joint leader, picking his way through stages that seemed to be littered with parked cars as Kielder took its toll.
Left 5 rough, 40. Right 1 over crest and bump, and left 2 over small crest.
The parked cars may have taken the edge off Chris Moore's time on stage 7. He was 4th fastest, and that's what made it so close at the top. The top 6 in less than 20 seconds, and it's very tight at the top, especially the top 3, and there are 4 more stages still ahead. Juan Roca lost a bit of time last night when he hit a chicken, one of those places with 2 tight corners very close together. And rally leader Chris Moore could have lost a lot of time at the start of stage 8 when things began to get just a little bit confusing.
Was it? Yeah, it. Go. No, go. No, you stopped it. Nah. Not the way. No way. You stopped us.
3rd quickest and then 2nd quickest. Moore lost a little bit of time, though there was no consistently fast individual, but he still dropped to 3rd place.
60, right 2, 80.
Jack Ingleby was fastest on the first stage after service and led the rally, but was 2nd fastest on the next and dropped back to 2nd. 2 seconds down on the new rally leader, Sean Gallagher, who had moved it all up a gear. Gallagher taking over at the top, Ingleby 2nd, Moore down to 3rd, Roca 4th, all in 10 seconds, and then comes the first big gap to 5th place Mike Faulkner. Jack Ingleby finished his day with a flourish, his quickest time on the last stage being his 3rd of the day, and fastest times on half the day's stages for 3rd place on the leaderboard tells you how very hard this rally was. Sean Gallagher started the final stage as the heavens opened and he caught the worst of the weather head on. Third on the stage before, he was also third on this one, but it just wasn't enough to maintain his lead on a rally that had turned out to be as close as any of his battles with Gary Jennings last year.
170 over finish. Flat 2 right. Okay.
Chris Moore launched himself at the 13 miles of the penultimate stage in a desperate bid for victory, and it worked. He was fastest by 4 seconds, a massive amount on a day like this. And then with Gallagher third, this was just what he needed. Even though he was second on the last stage, it was only by 3 seconds, and once again he was still faster than Gallagher, who was third, and that meant the outcome was settled. Moore, Gallagher, Ingleby and Roker was how they finished, and the big gap was between third and fourth. The top 3 were just a missed shift apart. What a good day this was for Chris Moore. He came under attack early on, and when things got tough, this time he was able to raise his game and get back in the lead, and that has been the missing part of his jigsaw up till now. Gallagher still tops the points table by a goodly margin though, and a DNF on the Borders rally at round 1 means Moore is still way down in 6th place.
Yesterday I won by a minute and a half, and today it was 2.9 seconds, so 2 extremes, stressful day.
Into 3 left plus, very rough, over rocks.
Celebrations for Moore, but he knows that one win doesn't make a title campaign, and now he needs to back it up with another good result here in Scotland. Sean Gallagher also needs a good result. He knows the value of early points, but he also knows that it will be hard work for everyone on these fast gravel stages, and hard work for the front drive 206s.
All these small cars, like, you're always suffering like that, you know. You're always trying to keep the momentum going all the time, like, that's what it's all about. If you slip up at all, like in one of the corners, you know, slightly sideways, you can be guaranteed you're been a second or two at the end of the stage, like, you know.
Down on power from the start of stage 1, Chris Moore had decided that the catalytic converter was to blame and was planning a change in service. Just ahead in 4th place, Philip Morrow had no dramas on these opening 2 stages, 14 miles in total, and he was planning only a spanner check. Sebastian Ling found the first stage so slippery he thought he must have picked up a puncture, but it wasn't the case, and he picked up 3rd place instead on stage 2, moving up 1 place as Jack Ingleby slipped down the leaderboard, and he did have a puncture on the 2nd test.
Narrow bump brakes, 42 left over jump dip, don't cut, into jump, 60 flat, 2 left over crest, into flat right, 100 down line, 1.
Struggling with unfamiliar pace notes, Sean Gallagher collected a puncture on stage 2. Despite going off briefly on stage 1, Mike Faulkner set the 2nd fastest time, 9/10 of a second slower than Gallagher. Then he was 6 seconds faster than anyone else on stage 2, a combination that left him with a 7-second lead at the end of the first 2 stages. 2 stages down, and this is far from a complete picture of the rally, but it is only one day and there are just over 40 miles to go. But already the form book seems to have taken a tumble. Mike Faulkner prefers to take things steady to start, but he's come out of the traps at full bore today.
Yeah, we've been trying really hard. We've been been using every bit of road, bits of ditches and everything, but the times are there, so we're riding our luck, but that's what you got to do.
Sean Gallagher kept the gap to Mike Faulkner pinned at 7 seconds all day. His last gasp charges to victory have passed into Super Cup folklore.
Free right plus, don't cut, open, flat right, 250 up, line, flat right.
Now with 8 seconds in hand, Mike Faulkner was driving his hardest, but there were 27 miles to go on the last 2 stages. Matt Jessup made it almost to the end of the last stage. The front wheels had hooked in the ditch and there was no way the little Peugeot was coming out by itself. After a disappointing morning, Jack Ingleby had a good afternoon on the stages, and as Gallagher went down, he went up to 3rd place. 14th, after struggling with pace notes early on, Juan Roca shot up the leaderboard as he settled into the groove, and now he was in a fine 2nd place. And Mike Faulkner drove as hard as he knew how over the last few miles. He knew Gallagher would give it everything on the long final stage, and he was ready for it. Almost 4 more seconds were added to his lead in those 15 miles, and that gave him a well-deserved first victory in the Super Cup Series. And it was another well-earned second for the surprising Spaniard Juan Roca, who fumbled with those unfamiliar notes early on and then just got his head down and drove again. Which is exactly what Mike Faulkner had done.
We were absolutely 100%, especially on the last stage when it was close with Sean, so there's not much extra to come tomorrow, but we'll be out to try and do the same.
There's the official result, and it's a vital one as well, with full points on offer for today's one-day event and again when they go out again tomorrow. Sunday is a brand new rally for the Super Cup crews, but on the stages it's still the same old story. Sharp stones and clouds of dust. With his fuel pump fixed and in 2nd place after the opening test, Sean Gallagher dropped to 5th on the next. Another bloody puncture, he said afterwards. Yesterday's winner, Mike Faulkner, thought the first stage was very tricky and took it steady. He was 3rd at the end of it and stayed there after the morning's 2nd stage. In 6th place after stage 1, Juan Roca attacked stage 2 very hard. 2nd fastest, 10 seconds ahead of the next man. He was up to 2nd place, 7 seconds clear of his nearest rival. Fastest on both the opening tests, Jack Ingleby was 7 seconds to the good at the head of the rally. With no problems worth speaking about, not even a proper puncture, this was looking good for the Inglebys, going well on an event they both enjoy and which does count as their home event, even if home is a 4-hour drive away from Dumfries. Disillusioned after plunging to 5th place early on because of a puncture, Sean Gallagher finished his character-building weekend in 3rd place.
Flat left and flat left again. 6th stage, jumps into flat right, continues over jumps and rough. 6th stage, crest and crest jump. Crest jump and flat left continues.
Fastest time on the final stage of the day set the seal on a really excellent weekend for Juan Roca. 2nd place for the 2nd time in 2 days. After doing most of the hard work early on, Jack Ingleby took a 9-second lead into the final stage and emerged the winner by a margin of 12 seconds. A maiden win for the Inglebys then, another 2nd for Catalunya and 3rd spot for the points leader, just good enough to keep his title hopes in play. It was a good day for Jack and Grania Ingleby, 2 good days, an excellent points haul and a champagne celebration as well. But it only lifts them into 4th place, although they look a lot better on drop scores, but it's very early days for that kind of mathematics.
We had a great day. I mean, the first 2 stages made it for us. We really pushed hard. on them to see what we could do, and we basically held on to the lead for the entire day.
It was a home win for Jack and Grania Ingleby, and now they're heading back to Scotland, but this time they'll be on tarmac. Starting from Edinburgh's new Ocean Terminal, the Jim Clark Memorial is the only closed roads event in mainland Britain, and the narrow lanes around Duns are notoriously a difficult place for the crews to make their first foray onto tarmac this season. The rally is spread over 2 days with a super special on Friday night right here in Ocean Terminal. 2 trips through the 1 mile stage provide plenty of entertainment for the spectators, but very little opportunity for the crews to get into their stride. In second place, Philip Morrow was fastest of them all on this second trip through the stage.
And 6 right, don't cut rough. Easy. 150, caution, chicane, left entry. Go.
But the fastest aggregate time over the 2 stages went to the man who really shouldn't have been here at all, but for the generosity of his rivals and his many friends, which turned out to be pretty much the same thing in the end. Chris Moore tops the overnight leaderboard, and you don't need me to tell you that there wasn't a single person below him who would have had it any other way. But already the weather had played the wild card. A light drizzle iced the oil and dust and turned the tarmac road surface into a skating rink. And Paul Swift was among the first of the Super Cup drivers to do a Torvill and Dean impression. But nothing too serious for him, and he was far from being the only one who had this kind of problem.
80, caution, square left, don't cut gravel. .41 right. It's alright. 250, 1 left over crest.
Seeing Desi Keenan stuck in the ditch like that might well act as a reminder that the surface was very slippery. So slippery that even taking it easy wasn't enough to stay out of trouble.
Caution, 4 left, slippy, and 2 right.
Well, of course, it was all slippy. The trouble is there was no way of knowing just how slippy.
Don't let it roll. Back into the corner.
Yes, they were facing the wrong way, and though they hadn't rolled, they were losing more time. And on a one-day rally, you can never get that back again.
250, just tiptoes. It's crazy.
Leading the rally at this moment was Stuart Jones, with 3 seconds in hand over Gallagher after taking it steady this morning in the appalling conditions. A close second with 3 stages to go is normally Sean Gallagher's favourite position. But this time, the points leader didn't look too happy with the way things were going.
Yeah, I think we misjudged it last night on the first stage, one of the hairpins. It looked a bit different on the recce with all the cars around me. But we're okay then after that. This morning, very, very slippy.
3 stages to go on the Jim Clark rally, and though the weather has eased and the rain that fell earlier went some way to washing the road instead of just glazing it, this surface is still very slippery.
100. Philip.
After a wild morning of spins and other moments, the Morrows had finally run out of luck and rode. It happened just as Chris Moore made a charge for the front. With the right tyres on the final stage, he said afterwards, we could have chased the win. As it was, he was chasing the scenery again and was third, just 11 seconds behind the leader and 6 seconds away from second place at the end. With a lead of 3 seconds, but a little sideswipe through the undergrowth damaged the steering and slowed him. He lost 8 seconds to Sean Gallagher and dropped to second as the points leader got back to his winning ways and racked up another one. Well-earned results all round at the top then, but these positions are unlikely to change the look of the championship leaderboard by very much. The order may not be that different, but it probably looks a whole lot more comfortable to Sean Gallagher now than it did this morning. He stays firmly at the top, while 12th place today has left Juan Roca a point clear of Jack Ingleby. Stuart Jones and Chris Moore aren't even visible. With the season on its downhill run to the finish now, Sean Gallagher has every reason to spray the champagne. This could be a vital win. For the next round of the series, the Super Cup breaks away from the British Championship calendar and comes west for the Harry Flatters. Jack Ingleby started stage 1 with the brake bias all wrong and ended it with 3 wheels, a car full of dents and 2 extra minutes on his time card. Not part of the plan at all.
Came in, fine speed, everything, turning it, understeered a little bit, on the left foot brake, help it go in, and it just went woof round. Too much back brakes, caught it that way, and it was coming around the other way and clipped something on the inside, a board or a concrete curb. Just clipped it, put it up on its nose and slid off into the ditch. So the spectators were great, pulled us out.
Richard Sykes with another one who was distracted by the cars going off in the early stages, but picked up speed and was going okay until he hit a big hole on stage 5 and damaged the suspension. And look who was leading after the first 6 stages on this notoriously fast and challenging tarmac. 18-year-old Stuart Jones again, who looked good last time out on the Jim Clark and was looking better than ever now. The leaderboard at the end of 6 stages of day 1, and it's remarkable not just for who's at the top, as for who isn't on it at all. Day 2 is the longest with 9 stages on offer, but this too got off to a wobbly start with a series of accidents this morning which dismissed 3 cars. The worst of them involved Peter Salter, who was one of 4 people taken to hospital as a result. 2 of them were released immediately and 2 were detained for a couple of days before being sent home. After the opening stages, there were just seconds separating McHale, Moore and Roca, the Spanish driver having more trouble than most with the chickens and the chips. Chickens are the very tight corners, of course, as we know, but until McHale and then Chris Moore both ran into a herd of sheep on stage 8, no one really knew what the chips were all about. But now it was Roca 2 seconds ahead of Moore, McHale 12 seconds further back and 5 more stages to go. With 30 seconds in hand at the overnight halt, Stuart Jones had no real problems this morning. He was under no pressure and he had nothing to report, not even the chips on stage 8. Good clean run, he kept saying at the end of each stage, and his lead was a few seconds more than it had been. He'd been holding the lead on the Jim Clark with no sign of pressure, and now he was maintaining his lead and his concentration with similar ease.
I couldn't be happier really. I mean, I've got a nice lead so we can generally take it easy and just try and drive to the finish now.
Now several drivers were cruising home for a finish. That didn't include George Philippides, who was pushing so hard he broke an engine mount after one hard landing and finished the day in 6th place, well clear of pursuit and far too far away from Seb Ling to even think about catching him. Ahead of Ling in 4th place, Gareth McHale's battle to be in the fight for 2nd place was defused when he went into a square left a bit too deep.
On flat crest 120. Flat crest 80, right entry, turn 2 left.
It was stuck on the edge and it couldn't be driven out, so it had to be pushed. Even in an empty landscape, there are always spectators nearby on a rally, and they quickly came to the rescue, easily manhandling the Peugeot out of the ditch.
Okay, keep it calm. Flat crest 120, just calm down. 4 right over crest tightens badly.
The long-running battle for second place was still a double-header and was unresolved until the final stage. Juan Roca was looking at a gap of just 1 second between himself and Chris Moore, but a little Spanish spin while Moore himself confessed that he had flown the last 15-miler decided it in favour of Newcastle by just 8 seconds. But despite Moore claiming yet another fastest time as he battled clear of Roca, Stuart Jones had grown his overnight lead from 30 to 40 seconds and cruised home to a steady victory. Hard to believe this was his first ever Super Cup win. Jones at the top of the leaderboard, Moore doubtless delighted with second, and Juan Roca continues to surprise in this super competitive series. It's almost time for those end-of-season mathematics where drivers cancel out their 2 worst performances of the season, but with 60 more points on offer there's plenty of opportunity for both Juan Roca and Jack Ingleby to mount a serious challenge. Maybe Mike Faulkner and Richard Sykes as well. The Ulster is their 3rd consecutive tarmac outing and it's raining again, making driving difficult and tyre choice a matter of guesswork even for the locals.
It's tricky. It's Irish roads. It's going to be tricky. As usual, it's raining here. Anything can happen. Tyre choice is going to be really lucky. I think whoever gets the tyres right, it's going to be a gamble, you know.
And while Chris Moore's plan may have been to take things easy, Richard Sykes definitely wasn't and became the first victim of the weather.
6 right at gate, 6 right at gate into caution, 2 right into big jump over narrow bridge, 3rd into left, 46 left, 6 left.
No, that's the second next.
Yeah. Into 2 right, into 5 left, 2 right.
Hardly surprising that it knocked it out of gear. It was a big jump and they weren't taking it slowly. No problems on the first 3 stages for Chris Moore, apart from sliding around a bit, but he was 3rd, 14 seconds behind the leader and 6 away from 2nd spot, who was local man Sean Gallagher. He dropped a couple of seconds on each of these first 3 stages to the man who was now the leader of the event by 8 seconds. And it looked as if this was set to become a battle between the 2 local drivers. Running on wets all round, just like Gallagher, Gareth McHale was going very well up front. He's shown up increasingly well all season and now seems to be in his element on home ground. Or in this case, 5 feet clear above home ground. No big moments, he said, after that particular stage. Arriving in service just before darkness fell, around 8 o'clock, McHale had no real problems to report and no cause for complaint either.
I'm happy enough now with the time so far. There's a bit more there in reserve we want, so we'll go the way I am now for the night stages.
That's the look of the leaderboard after 3 stages then, and that 10-second penalty may well have defused the battle for the lead somewhat. 3 more stages before the overnight halt, and they're the same 3 stages as before, with the added attraction of doing them in the dark.
Two right, 2 left, stay middle, 66 left, Slippy continues, 6 left, Slippy 130, no.
It was the last stage of the night and the impact had been a big one.
Get him, push.
They were on their way, limping home, dead last.
Sergio, go. You want your lamp pod? No, they bring one. Okay, what have we got? Puncture wise, whatever. Can we steer? How far we got to go, mate? 2.5 miles.
Juan Roca also went off on stage 6, but he'd been going so well up to that moment that he was now up to 3rd place anyway. And Gareth McHale had an off on the first of the night stages, number 4, and put Sean Gallagher into the lead that he maintained all the way to the overnight halt just 2 stages later. Gallagher and McHale together at the top, and then it's Roca, Ling and Jones in another little group just ahead of Jack Ingleby, 15 seconds further back. Juan Roca had dropped 1 place on the leaderboard and was now just 10 seconds away from being caught by Ingleby, perhaps because he found the early mist difficult on what the locals probably called this fine, soft morning. Stuart Jones found the backs weren't quite so soft. But it looked worse than it was, and he held on to the place he'd snatched from Roca by a tiny margin. But he hadn't kept 3rd because this was Seb Ling's morning, and while everyone else seemed to be struggling on the first 3 stages, he kept going and climbed 2 places up the leaderboard, from 5th up to 3rd. 4 seconds behind Sean Gallagher after the first stage of the morning, a flying Gareth McHale was 2 seconds in front of him 9 miles later at the end of the next stage. 8 miles further up the road, Gallagher was looking at P1 with a 30-second margin after McHale joined the ranks of the spinners and dropped 25 seconds on stage 9. It had taken Gallagher just 9 minutes to complete stage 9 safely and seize what now looked like a commanding lead, but with 7 stages still left to go. Ling had been quickest on stage 10, but then it was McHale setting the pace, pulling a couple of seconds from Ling on each of the next 2 stages, but grabbing big handfuls of time from the very cagey Sean Gallagher. He was driving to a very difficult plan because all he needed now was to manage the gap back to McHale and keep it on the road to win the rally and the championship. No risk driving was clearly the order of the day, but how fast was just fast enough to maintain his lead all the way to the finish. Gallagher arrived at service with McHale just 8 seconds behind him. Chris Moore went missing from the overnight leaderboard after disappearing on stage 6 when his brake problem reappeared just before a very large bank loomed out of the darkness.
I don't like this event. It's just twice I've been in this service area for 2 years without a car. I've never got a service in this service area yet. I'm really disappointed.
4 more stages and still the weather was either unbelievably bad or beautifully good. Caught on the wrong tyres in a downpour, Jack Ingleby was forced to give up his pursuit of Juan Roca and 4th place. The Spaniard was in exuberant mood wherever the sun was shining and just happened to have perfectly cut tyres when the rain was falling, but he couldn't catch Sebastian Ling. He was making a very determined effort to join the battle for the lead, but the boys in front had just turned the switch to Maniac, and he couldn't keep up with that. 8 seconds, 7 seconds, 15 seconds. The gap between first and second was swinging wildly. McHale launched a stealth attack on the very short stage 15 and grabbed 8 seconds in 4 miles from Sean Gallagher. So they were 7 seconds apart, starting the final stage. Stage 16, 7.5 miles, flat out all the way, said Gallagher afterwards, and we kept it on the road.
50, flat crest, okay. That's a championship, boy. That's the championship.
Just 3 seconds between them at the end of the rally, and Sebastian Ling's commendable third place a long way shy of the massive battle up front. A well-deserved win for Sean Gallagher and Richard Pashley, and though every win is vital in the championship season, this was the one that sealed the title for them.
But there's a bonus in store which we'll find out.
We worked out in the end, we only had a finish second, so we weren't really pushed with the overall lead. And we just, as Gareth wanted, do you know what I mean? We weren't good because there was a good distance behind that, and we still done it, so we were happy.
With 1 round left to go, Jack Ingleby might still catch Juan Roca for second place, but no one can catch Sean Gallagher at the top of the points. And what do points make? Points make prizes, and Gallagher has scooped the big one. Now Sean Gallagher arrives in Yorkshire as the newly crowned Super Cup champion, a well-earned win that was never easy, hounded all the way, as he was, by at least 2 other drivers who might have kept him from the title. 14th through the very short opening Super Special, Sebastian Ling had jumped to 6th place 2 stages later and had settled into the rally rhythm. Someone else who always likes a slow start while he gets the feel of the rally is Juan Roca, enough on the pace to scare himself on a fast corner in Gale Rig. It was going smoothly enough for Stuart Jones, 7th, 6th and then 4th place, 9 seconds behind the leader and 4 seconds down on 3rd place, Jack Ingleby, who was less concerned with his overall position than with just staying ahead of Roca, which would give him 2nd place in the championship. 4.4 seconds ahead of Jack was Sean Gallagher, who had nothing to worry about, especially since he was only half a second down on rally leader Chris Moore, who'd been 9th after stage 1 and then seconds faster than Gallagher after the first 2 proper stages. Stage 4, first one back after service, was a turning point for several people, including Mike Faulkner and Richard Sykes, who both went off heavily and were joined by Jack Ingleby, who lost almost a minute in the same ditch and dropped to 15th. A big pothole on stage 6 claimed Chris Moore's front suspension and left him 10 miles to go on the rim. He dropped from 1st to 3rd, promoting Stuart Jones to 2nd place. Sean Gallagher had already passed him for the lead on stage 4, pretty much as expected, and was now looking at a 4-second lead with 3 stages and 17 miles still left to go on the day.
We're doing different things, like, because I don't have to, you know, even if I don't finish here, like, it's no harm done.
I've been playing around a bit today, said Sean Gallagher after dropping from 1st place to 3rd, but it'll be all right tomorrow. Which was more than Chris Moore could say, battling against an electrical fault and 2 seconds ahead, 3 behind the new leader, Stuart Jones, who'd popped up in the lead on stage 9 after a trouble-free afternoon on these classic stages in Dolby Forest. 9 stages and 64 miles complete, and it's all about the top 3, with 4th placed Philip Morrow almost a minute behind the leaders. Day 2, 7:30 on Sunday morning, and once again the weather was perfect. With the car more or less falling apart around him and tyres disintegrating even quicker, Chris Moore somehow managed to stay in 3rd place. Sean Gallagher hit a rock and bent the front suspension but hung on to service, meaning that Stuart Jones was not only still the leader, but by a margin of 10 seconds rather than the 2 he began with this morning. It's the 3rd time this year we've seen the young Stuart Jones in this position, and he still seems slightly puzzled by how easy it all is. Sebastian Ling got the 4th place he was after, but he never caught Phil Morrow. In fact, he was behind the troubled Chris Moore on the final stage of the event, staggering home in and against all the odds, 3rd place. Philip Morrow should have been 3rd, but was 2nd, and Sean Gallagher finished his season on a high note when Stuart Jones retired at the end of stage 14 with electrical failure. A bitter pill for young Stuart Jones, but this has been a great season for him anyway, though admittedly it's been a better one for Sean Gallagher, who must be getting used to the taste of champagne by now as he celebrates his 4th win of the season, underlining his position at the very top of the championship table. Gallagher had it sorted last time out, and now Roker wraps up 2nd spot just clear of Jack Inglis.